You're listening to the weekly Parsha Podcast with Ari Goldwag, recorded with Hashem's never-ending assistance in the Ramat Beit Shemesh Israel 5779, 2019. This week's Parsha is Parsha Shoftim, and I'd like to share with you a word from Reb Chaim Friedlander in his brand new book, Sifsei Chaim on Devarim. This is the piece on this week's Parsha. Exciting for me. Hope it's exciting for you. And Shoftim Shotrim, the Torah begins our Parsha with the obligation for us to appoint judges over us, to appoint those who will keep us on track, keep us on the track of the Torah. And we have the idea that we're to follow after the words of our sages, to follow after the words of our Torah scholars, those who truly seek to know the will of God, who truly seek to know what it is that Hashem expects from us. And I'd like to share with you a bit of what Reb Chaim Friedlander says, and also a bit of a story which I came across just yesterday. It was in the Mishpacha magazine about 3 months ago, and I actually spoke with the people that it happened to. I wanted to hear it firsthand because it's an amazing, amazing story about Amunas Chachamim, about having faith and trust in our spiritual leaders. In this case, it was Reb Chaim Kanievsky, Gadol Hador of Eretz Yisrael. And so I want to share with you that story. Also want to share with you, it's connected to that story, one of the many things, Baruch Hashem, I'm working on in my business is a special song about a very, very great person whose name was Shlomo Zakheim, who was involved with Hatzalah and Chai Lifeline and many other amazing chasadim, and very, very, very much trying to make sure things were done. Tremendous amounts of tzedakah. He was a very wealthy person, and everything to be done without people really knowing about it. And he had amazing Amunas Chacham, you'll see from the story, we'll get there. But he was somebody who had tremendous belief. Whatever, if a great Gadol said something to him, if he had a Rebbe who said something to him, he listened without thinking twice. I'll start actually with a little story about him. I heard from his son. I heard many stories from his son. I'm involved in writing a song about this Reb Shlomo and his family, his father, his great-great-great-great-grandfather. Little story, he actually would fly, he would fly to Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, in order to get a bracha, to get a blessing, to get advice from great tzaddikim. He was very close to Reb Chaim Kanievsky. He was very close to Reb Michal Yehuda Lefkowitz, other great gedolim of Eretz Yisrael, Rav Neuwirth, the author of Shmir Shabbos Kolchasa. And one time he flew all the way to Eretz Yisrael, I believe it was to Reb Michal Yehuda Lefkowitz, in order to get a bracha on a certain business venture, to get a blessing. And he came to Eretz Yisrael, and he went in to speak to this Gadol. He came just to speak to him, to get a bracha. And the Gadol said to him, the great tzaddik said to him, "It's not a good idea. I don't think you should do it." And instead of getting a blessing, he got direction not to do it. And whatever the Gadol would say, he would accept without any questions. And that's how he always did things with his business, Reb Shlomo. And he was quite wealthy, and so it seemed to have worked for him. Anyway, okay, so that's just an introduction to Amunas Chachamim, and the idea that Reb Friedlander speaks about, Reb Chaim Friedlander, it's not so much related to specifically listening to personal direction from tzaddikim, which is also true, which is really what the story is going to be about. But generally understanding what is the idea behind it. Why do we have to have Amunas Chachamim? Why do we have to listen to our sages? What if they're wrong? What if they're mistaken? We still have to listen to what they say, right? Chazal say, Pasuk says, don't turn right or left from what they say. Rashi tells us, Chazal say, even if they tell you that your left foot is your right foot, or your left hand is your right hand, and your right hand is your left hand, you must listen to them. Even if they tell you something which you think is the opposite of reality, still we are to listen to them. And what is the idea behind that? Besides the fact that, as we'll see in the story, there's something called Ruach HaKodesh, they have divine inspiration, but what is the idea, generally speaking, of Amunas Chachamim? So it's such an important idea. I'd like to speak about it. He says like this, Emunah hu yesod shel avodas Hashem. First of all, he talks about the fact that there's an idea of Emunah, just Emunah. What is the idea of Emunah? It's the idea of trusting in Hashem, believing in Hashem. Chavakuk came and he told us what is the foundation of the entire Torah. What is that one mitzvah which pretty much sums up the entire Torah? It's that the righteous person lives by his faith in Hashem. Okay? In order for a person to come to the correct path in the service of Hashem, a person needs to have faith in our sages, in those who study the Torah, in those who seek Hashem's will. That they will explain to him and provide for him, teach him the correct path in serving Hashem. It can't be that every person just does whatever they feel like doing when it comes to their service of Hashem. It doesn't work that way. When it comes to rising to loftier levels in spirituality, our sages gave us a precise instruction. And it's only with their path that we're able to rise up in our service of Hashem. And it's for this reason that the Torah gave us very powerful foundations. And when it comes to this matter, we can't allow the Torah to just be explained by every individual according to how they understand it. It doesn't work that way. We have a number of different commandments in the Torah to strengthen for ourselves our faith and our conviction in following the words of our sages. And that's true for the sage in our generation. We don't just have the holy books that were written by the great scholars and tzaddikim of previous generations, but we have tzaddikim and scholars in our generation who know who we are and who speak to us and guide us based on our current circumstances. One of the mitzvahs in the Torah that strengthen this idea is that we have an obligation to follow the majority, which means that you can have a number of different opinions about things when it comes to the Torah. What does Hashem expect of me? What does Hashem believe? What does Hashem believe is right for me? Or what do I believe is right that Hashem wants me to do? Right? So you can have multiple opinions about that. There are many different great sages and scholars. So we have a mitzvah to go after the Rav, to go after, if we have a number of different scholars who disagree, we follow the majority. Because of Achinuch, veer ha-mitzvah. The Chinuch writes, in regards to the explanation of this mitzvah, this is an amazing thing. This obligation, which is to follow after the rabbim, to listen to our sages, to go after the majority, is something which is commanded to us in order to strengthen the foundations of our belief. If we would have just been commanded to do whatever we think the Torah means, as best as we can understand it. Everyone would say their own opinion as to what the Torah expects. So if that was the case, if we didn't have this obligation to go after the majority, so then each person would make a decision based on their own experience, based on their own understanding, what's the right thing to do. And that person would have to do that thing based on their own understanding. But now that the Torah obligates us and says we must follow the majority opinion of those Torah scholars who understand the will of Hashem, it's an amazing and foundational idea. Why do we do it this way? Why do we follow the majority of our Torah scholars? Because we need one Torah. We need to have one set of rules that we all follow. Judaism needs to look uniform, needs to look the same. And it has looked the same for the last 3,800 years, partly for this reason. We have Rav, we have a majority of sages who say this is what is the right thing to do, and we follow that. Okay? You can't budge from their opinion. When we fulfill that which our sages tell us to do, we are fulfilling the commandment of Hashem. If, let's say, heaven forbid, the majority of sages make a mistake and they don't align themselves with the true will of Hashem, the sin is on them and not on us. Very interesting. Okay? And he says in the Hemshech, as he continues, he says that the truth is that even if they make a mistake, we still need to follow them. One of the reasons is because that's the rule. We need to be able to follow them no matter what. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu set up within the rules that sometimes it's going to happen. They're going to make a mistake, and we still need to follow them. In fact, he brings, and I'm not going to read everything inside now, because I also want to tell this important story. He brings that there's a Gemara. It's in Baba Metzia, Daf Nun Tes. And the Gemara there says that there's a certain story. Rabbi Eliezer said a certain psak halach, he said a certain halachic decision, but the majority of the sages said not like him. They argued with him. And a voice came out from heaven and said, the halacha is like Rabbi Eliezer. Even though he's a das yachid, even though he was a singular person, the voice said that he was correct, that he had aligned himself properly with the will of Hashem. And the sages heard the heavenly voice and they said, we don't care what the heavenly voice says. Leba shamayim, the Torah is not in the heavens. We have an obligation. The Torah says, Acharei Rabim. We go after the majority. We hold this way. It doesn't matter even if Rabbi Eliezer is right. We still hold that we're correct, and we're going to go after the majority. Now, there was a great sage who at the time met Elijah the prophet, Eliyahu Navi, who appears throughout history, even until this day. There are people who have had Gilui Eliyahu, who have seen Elijah the prophet. And so in the times of the Gemara, so somebody saw him and he said, what was Hashem doing at the time in heaven? What was Hashem saying? What was going on? When he sent out this voice that Eliezer was right, and the sages said, doesn't matter if he's right, we hold that we're right, and we're going to go after the Rabbim. And Elijah told them, Hashem was saying, he was joyous, and he was saying, Nitzchuni banai, my children have vanquished me, my children won. And what's the idea? He explains that, what does it mean? We won over HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The idea is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu set up in the system, that the system to correctly be able to continue, to be uniform, and that Klal Yisrael should be able to follow properly the instructions of the sages, even if they make a mistake, still, that's what's right. That is indeed the right thing to do. Acharei Rabim, we go after the majority of our Torah scholars. And that's how important it is for us to understand. Somebody like Reb Chaim Kanievsky, who's alive today, Zayin Gezun, should be well. Somebody like Reb Moshe Feinstein, who passed away in the 80s. These people dedicated their entire lives to understanding what is Hashem's will. And when they say something, on the simple level, they're saying something which is they know from their lifetime experiences. Reb Chaim is a man in his 90s, I believe. He knows from his lifetime experience in Torah. He spends his entire life, every single day, every waking moment involved in Torah, answering questions for Klal Yisrael. He knows what Hashem's will is. So when he says it, and we have other great Gedolim who agree with him. So on that level, he understands what Hashem's will is, so we have to follow his command. On another level, like I mentioned, there's the concept of Ruach HaKodesh, of divine inspiration. And here's where we come to the story, which is an amazing story, and it involves Shlomo Zakheim as well. The story begins that a certain young lady, her name is Racheli Fuchs. I'm telling you the name because it was printed in this article, and I actually spoke to her husband Shol today. And Racheli, so she was very close to the Zakheim family. She considered Shlomo Zakheim to be her uncle. And she knew the story about Shlomo Zakheim, that when he was young, in his early days of his business, before he had made a lot of money and before he had become very successful, so he had an idea for a particular business, and he thought that was going to be the idea that would make a lot of money. He brought the idea to a certain gadol, I don't remember who it was, and the gadol said, don't do it. Don't get involved in that business idea. He was very gung-ho, strong about it. He thought it was the right thing to do. The gadol said, don't do it. As soon as he heard what the gadol said, the great tzaddik, the great sage, immediately, if the gadol says something, that's what we do. He didn't get involved in that business venture. He went on to get involved in other things that were successful. Years later, it was Nizgala Milslam Afrei, he found out that those who got involved in that particular business venture lost everything. It was a lemon. It wasn't a good business venture. Somehow, the advice, the gadol, whoever he asked, knew, perhaps Ruach HaKodesh, or he sensed something was wrong with it. He followed the advice, and he was successful. Now, but one of the things about the story, which this woman mentioned, Racheli, is that he didn't know. He didn't know at the time. He thought he was giving up a lot, but he was doing what was right. So she knew this story about him. She was not feeling well one day, And she was feeling very unwell, and she went to the doctor, and the doctor told her, "You're pregnant. You're 18 weeks pregnant." She had no idea she was pregnant. Her baby was only 11 months old. She didn't expect to become pregnant. And she went to have a scan of the baby to see if everything's okay. And the doctor told her that not only is everything not okay, but there is not enough amniotic fluid inside of the uterus in order to take care of this baby. This baby, the lungs will not develop, the arms and the legs will not develop. This baby will come out. Right now it's being sustained because it is connected through the cord, through the umbilical cord, so it's receiving oxygen, but as soon as it's born, the baby's going to die. He had much experience with this type of case. So they scheduled some tests for the following week to see what's going on, what the story is. There's also a risk. Shaul told me there was also a risk of a certain type of infection that is common in such cases. Anyway, in the meantime, before the tests happen, so they have a Rav, his name is Rav Veer in Shalim, and he took Shaul to Reb Chaim Kanievsky. They wrote out the whole entire case, the story, exactly what the doctor said, exactly the whole situation. And they asked Reb Chaim what to do. And Reb Chaim read through the entire page, both sides. And Reb Chaim said to them, the doctors don't know what they're talking about. The baby's going to be fine. All you need to do is daven. That's all he said. So they left, and Shaul was very excited, very happy to hear this information, this statement. And I must add, it's very important, and Shaul told me this was a very important point, that before they went into Reb Chaim Kanievsky to ask his advice, to tell him the situation, Rav Veer told him, whatever Reb Chaim says, you have to accept before you walk in there, that whatever he says you're going to do. That's how it works with Reb Chaim. You have to do whatever he says. If you're not ready to do whether he says grow your beard down to your belly button, whatever he says that you got to do it. So before they walked in, Shaul said, "I'm going to do whatever he says." He was ready to do whatever he said. So he was very excited about what Reb Chaim said. He got home. His wife was beside herself. She said, "What do you mean? I'm not going to put in any efforts. No hishtadlus. I have to find out what's going on. If there are things that we can do to help the baby, how can I just leave it as is? No tests, no nothing." Reb Chaim said, "No, we're going to do exactly what he said." There's a tremendous amount of pressure from the family, from this side, that side, from the doctors. The doctors were saying you should abort. The baby's not going to live. At best, the baby's going to be very deformed. They listened to Reb Chaim. Reb Chaim said the baby's going to be fine. Don't listen to the doctors. They canceled all of the tests. He said not to do any tests. There were certain things that needed to be checked once a week to make sure that she didn't get any infections. She did do that test, and each time she would go in there, they would say, again, there's no amniotic fluid. It's the baby. They would go on and on and on and say what's going to happen. Negative reports. And it was a very difficult time. And Racheli kept on reminding herself about Shlomo, about what Shlomo had done with his business. He had emunas chachamim, he had faith, trust that Kodesh Baruch Hu would not guide him wrong through his great scholars, through his great sages. And she kept being mechazik herself, strengthening her emunah, strengthening her belief, strengthening her trust. And I asked Shaul, I said, this story sounds like an amazing story. I'm not up to the end yet, but I want to know, what can I take home from this story? And he said, I want you to know that we are regular people. We're not, he told me he's a CPA, he's an accountant, he's not a guy necessarily sitting and learning. They are Torah people, but that's not his main occupation. And regular people, but they had tremendous amunas chachamim. They did exactly what Reb Chaim said. And I think it was 28 weeks into the pregnancy. It seemed like she was going to give birth. She went on bed rest. And it's very early, 3 months early. And she ended up in the hospital for 5 weeks before she finally gave birth with a cesarean section. And she woke up from the C-section and she heard a very faint cry. The sound of a voice of a baby, because her baby, not only was the baby able to breathe, but miraculously, she was davening for a nace. She was davening and davening and davening for a nace, remembering over and over again the story of Shlomo Zakheim. She davened for a nace and she got her nace. Not everything was perfect right at the beginning, but all of the disastrous predictions of the doctors were incorrect. The baby had developed normally. The baby did need to be, the baby was premature, 2 months. It was needed to be in the NICU. But everything developed normally. And Baruch Hashem, the baby now is 7 months old. And the name is Shlomo Alexander. Shlomo is named after Shlomo Zakheim. Alexander after Shaul's grandfather. And Reb Chaim Kanievsky was the sandik. When they did the bris, it was on Reb Chaim Kanievsky's lap. And it's a beautiful, touching story. And the power of the story is a few things that I take out of the story. First is the amazing insight, the amazing vision Reb Chaim Kanievsky had. That's not the highest level of the story to me. The fact that this couple was able, with the chizuk of their Rav, and with their own inner conviction, and with the memory of a story about Reb Shlomo Zakheim, they were able to strengthen themselves, to have bitachon, have amunah, and know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was going to take care of them. It was going to work out, and it did. They went back afterwards to the doctor, the original doctor who had made the negative prognosis, and they showed him the baby, and he said this is the first time in his entire life, and he's been doing this for many years, that he saw a baby come out from that situation whole and normal. And it was an ace. It was a true miracle. And I told him, and I believe it to be true, they also wrote that in the article, that it's so important, a story like this, where you see there was Amunas Chacham, and there was Bitachon, there was trust in Hashem, there was tefillah, amazing tefillahs, asking for miracles. And it works. It works. It's important to know that if you have that true Bitachon and Amunah HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you have Amunas Chacham, you trust in the sages who seek and understand what His will is, so then you can experience miracles. I want to bless you, and I ask you to bless me, that Hashem should help us to strengthen our Amunas Chacham, and strengthen our trust and faith in those sages, the sages of the people of Israel, who their whole life is involved in trying to understand the Ratzon Hashem. Hashem should help us to indeed seek after the Rabbim, the majority, the great many people who are trying to serve Hashem properly. Hashem should help us to be able to follow in His ways all of our days. Hashem should be mezaka us with miracles all the time. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful Shabbos. This podcast was made possible through the gracious donations of listeners like you. For more podcasts like this, please visit www.arigoldwag.com or search on iTunes Ari Goldwag.